What's up, legends, and welcome to a new sort of mini series I'm doing on this channel called Card Conversation, or Card Convo for short. Basically, I'm just going to take a little bit of time and just highlight individual cards that I find really interesting and just point out some of the interactions and implications of their existence, I guess. It's not really like a strategy guide or anything. I'm just kind of focusing on one card that I think is cool, and we're going to have a conversation about it. So today's video will be about the Houdini card, A Magician Never Reveals His Secret. So if we just take a look at that card, it's a Houdini-only scheme with a boost value of 4 and 1 copy. Kind of nothing interesting, or super interesting, I should say, yet. The draw 2 cards, gain 1 action effect is cool, but the ability I want to highlight is the actual bottom part of the effect. It says, if an effect would let an opponent look at your hand, you may reveal this card and cancel that effect. So Houdini has this card, and then he has the best card that kind of have passive effects, right? So this, you hold it in your hand and it can still do something even if you don't play it. The beautiful best card, if you ever discard that because of an opponent's effect, you get to draw a new card to replace it. So there's some interesting stuff going on with cards that like do stuff even if you don't directly play them, which is amazing. And this card in particular affects just how certain matchups go for Houdini, because normally hand knowledge is something that can potentially be game winning. And if an opponent gets to look at your hand, they can see what cards you have, what cards you don't have, and maybe make a big play or just change how they play to maximize that effect, that knowledge that they have, when otherwise they wouldn't. Because the mind games in this game are basically the bread and butter of how the game gets dictated with player and combat interactions. And if one player knows what options the other player has, that is huge. So equally huge is A Magician Never Reveals His Secrets, which is kind of a mouthful, but the acronym isn't a word either. So maybe we'll just shorten that to say Never Reveals, or maybe just Secrets. I don't know. We'll figure it out. It's equally huge that Never Reveals prevents opponents from looking at your hand, because this just directly counters maybe one of your opponent's best cards and best chances to help them win a matchup. So just to kind of fully illustrate who this effect is good against, on the left side of the column we can see all of the heroes that have hand peek effects, or effects that would let them look at Houdini's hand, what set they're from, and then also the characters from the same set as them that don't have hand peeks. So you might notice this video was originally going to come out, well, actually I made a post about it saying it would come out right after the Teen Spirit first impression videos. It was supposed to come out like a month before then, but I got a preview copy of Teen Spirit, thank you so much Restoration, and I noticed that Squirrel Girl had a hand peek effect. So I was like, well, I kind of have to wait to post this video because it's going to be immediately out of date if I post it before Teen Spirit. And I was originally going to record it on the weekend that I made all the first impressions videos, but then there was that whole debacle with the incorrect assets I was using, and basically I had to re-record those when I would have been recording this, so this got delayed a little bit, but here it is. So that's just some background on the origin story of this video. So if we're just taking a look at the numbers, there are currently 37 total heroes in the game, and if we minus Houdini, because we're not going to count him as a potential matchup, and add another Buffy, because there are 2 different Buffy matchups, which actually matters in this case because one of them has a hand peek and one of them doesn't, we still get 37 total heroes, in air quotes, that Houdini could play against. 12 of them have hand peeks and 25 of them do not. So roughly a third of all your matchups have hand peeks, which is like a pretty sizable chunk of heroes. Now, there are some differences in how meta relevant some of these heroes are. Like obviously Sherlock and Elektra are going to see a lot more play than Buffy and Spike, or even Deadpool, but still it's interesting to know that this card just like helps you tremendously in unprecedented ways in a third of your matchups. So what I was going to do in this video was basically just go through all of the other heroes' cards that a magician never reveals would cancel, and just talk about how that might affect the matchup. Obviously, I haven't played all these matchups, and I'm no Houdini expert. He is one of my favorite characters, but I just have not played him, admittedly, as much as I would like. But I just think it would be really cool to just visualize all of the options that this card really has. Because, yeah, you can say, oh, my opponent can't look at my hand. That's cool. But, like, what that actually means in the game specifically, I just thought would be a really interesting thing to have a conversation about, a card convo. So without further ado, we can get into it, and I will go through these heroes in alphabetical order, but also by release date. So we'll start with Battle of Legends Volume 1. Oh, and I have one more thing. You can see my face during this video because I realized there'd be a chunk of the screen that wouldn't have anything on it. So yeah, you get blessed by Bake's face in this video. So the first hero is Alice, and we have the card Snicker Snack that says, if you won the combat, look at your opponent's hand and choose one card for them to discard. Now, normally Alice is going to play this card when she's big, so it's going to be a 5, which would be pretty hard for Houdini to block naturally. He could boost a Grand Escape, I think is the blue 2 that lets him boost. He could boost that up to a 5, but that would be wasting a boost 3, and he typically wants to boost those on offense. I don't think this card matters too much as Alice, because I think she's going to win against Houdini by just smacking him over his bad defenses. Houdini has like a lot of 2s and 3s that big Alice, her bigness is just like the value of that block card. So basically the printed value of her card is just hitting for damage over the top, especially something like a Manxum or a Shift that can easily be 7s. I think those will hurt Houdini a lot more than just ripping a card out of his hand. But having Never Reveals as like a way to just stop Snicker Snack is nice, because that is like a decent advantage for Alice to have. Is she wins a combat, sees that you don't have very many blocks, and like rips one out, and then she just knows she can just continue being aggressive. But overall, Alice's game plan and like game winning strategy usually doesn't revolve around this card, mostly just because it's a one-off. The effect is conditional, and in most matchups like doesn't happen reliably enough for her to like want, or her to like have to rely on it. But it is just nice that Alice is probably going to win the combat against you, and so being able to, whenever I do this, it's me like imagining I'm Houdini, and I'm just like, nope, I got the card. It'll just be nice to do that and just be like, no, you don't get to see anything. And that being said, I should point out that Magician being a one-off card means that you might not draw it in these matchups, and that will hurt. But I think in certain ones you might just like mulligan for it to make sure you have it. We'll talk about more matchups that would matter in a little bit later. But obviously it's a one-off copy, so it's like Excalibur or Phoenix Form. Sometimes you're just not going to have it when you need it, and that's unfortunate. But when you do have it, it'll make a huge difference in some of these matchups. The next hero is Sinbad, and the card that Magician stops is Voyage to the Valley of the Giant Froggos, which just is the typical Voyage, and it says after combat, look at your opponent's hand. The Sinbad matchup I think is really rough for Houdini, because if Houdini is saving misdirections, his feints that the boost effect is deal 2 damage to any fighter, if he's saving those for the actual damage effect, then Sinbad's Voyages are not going to get canceled, which means good effects in terms of like the discard, the damage, the heal, Voyage home, and the snake hand peek, but also big damage because they will quickly ramp up. And with Sinbad's aggressive draw and high move value, he's going to be able to hit you pretty much throughout the game, depending on what the map is. Like very quickly, if he gets a couple Voyages out, it won't matter that you can boost all the way across the map. If he can just boost right out or just maneuver up, maneuver value of like 6 or something and just hit you on like a map like Raptor Paddock or something. So Sinbad has a lot of tools already built into his kit to beat you, and if you're saving your misdirections to actually cancel the voyages, you're losing out on some damage, which could potentially cause you to not be able to close out the game. So I think this effect is very important for Sinbad, just because seeing what you have in your hand, especially if you don't have feints, matters just a little bit more in this matchup, because sometimes you will play the feint on defense, and Sinbad can't always rely on you like wanting to hold on to it for the damage. Just knowing that you don't have misdirection, I should say, in your hand is big, but also just like knowing if you have a big reveal coming, or if it's like the 4 or for your next trick. So Sinbad, I think, is generally favored in this matchup, and just if he's able to look at your hand, that will help a lot. So this is just like something that, a little breadcrumb for Houdini to try to grasp onto to not lose horribly. The next matchup is the Dracula matchup, and Dracula has Do My Bidding. It has 2 copies, and it says, immediately. My mic is over there. Return your opponent's attack card to their hand, look at their hand, and choose an attack or versatile card for them to play. So a key thing about Magician is that if an effect would let an opponent look at your hand, which Do My Bidding has an effect that would let an opponent look at your hand, you can reveal the card and cancel that effect, which cancels everything on the card. So this just turns into a blank 3 for Dracula. And Do My Bidding is one of the best block cards in the entire game. Looking at your opponent's hand when it's not your turn, so it's their turn, it's on a defense card, so they're attacking you, you can look at their hand. Now they have less time to react to the fact that you just looked at their hand. In the case of like Sinbad and Alice, the hand peaks are on attack cards, which means on my turn as Sinbad, I'm attacking you. Usually I maneuver first. And then let's say I just get to look at your hand. Now it's your turn. You can just double maneuver, and now your hand is 2 cards bigger, and I have less certainty of what it is. But when Dracula is using this card, if Houdini maneuver boosts in and then attacks, and Drac plays this, well, it's going to be his turn for the next action. And now you have like perfect information on Houdini's hand, and that can be devastating. But if the effect is canceled, for one, best block card in the game reduced to a blank 3 is amazing for Houdini. And Dracula normally, his win condition is to bidding out the opponent's cancels, and then that will secure a beast form later in the game. But he can't reliably do that, which is even better for you, because now you can hold on to those misdirections a little bit more comfortably and be able to use them for damage if you want, and not be afraid of them just getting ripped out if you don't play them proactively. So when I first was thinking about this matchup, I was like, oh, Houdini's just going to destroy Dracula. He's going to eat him alive, because he can just... My dog just made a big exhale. What are you looking at? I don't know if you could hear that or not, but she's funny. What was I talking about? Theory crafting this matchup, I was like, well, Houdini can just set the stage, rip beast form out of Drac's hand, and then he just like doesn't have enough damage. And this card, bidding, just gets canceled. But this matchup is like actually surprisingly even, and dare I say it is Drac favored. So I think with this interaction, it definitely helps tip the scales towards Houdini. But like if Drac draws a bidding early in the game, he should just play it to like reduce the amount of time you have to draw your copy of this. And if he can kind of disrupt you early in the game with this, I think that should help him a lot. The next card is Study Methods from Sherlock's deck. So Sherlock is a very interesting matchup for Houdini, because you'll see in a second, Sherlock has other hand peaks besides Study Methods in his deck, but because of Sherlock's ability, they can't be canceled, which Magicians specifically says cancel that effect, and Sherlock's ability is that his effects cannot be canceled. So Sherlock OP as always, but I don't think this interaction matters a lot because Sherlock should not be attacking with this card because he should be running like the wind bullseye, not bullseye like Toy Story bullseye. Because Houdini's just going to go full aggro. He has the card draw to support it. He can chase you anywhere you go. He can maneuver boost with ability to get around Watson. He's just going to smack you, and he can smack Sherlock pretty hard with all of his boost things. And if Sherlock is attacking, he better be like getting some big damage with like a 5 or something. And definitely don't want to attack with a 3 value versatile, because this is something that he needs to block with. But on the other hand, when he blocks with this, he's probably not going to win because you can very easily boost over a 3. So like this study methods is really not winning against any of your cards except maybe for my next trick, which is just like an unfortunate situation if that happens. But like if you have this card in your hand, you're not even, if you have magicians in your hand, you're not worried about that interaction at all. But normally study methods isn't winning the combat for Sherlock, so I don't think this really matters. But talking about the other cards that Sherlock has that this does not stop, it doesn't stop either piece of the Wombo combo, eliminate the impossible or confirm suspicion, which is kind of upsetting. Like, I really wish it did, but you know, we can't ask for everything. So Sherlock can't actually confirm this card because it is a scheme, but he can eliminate it if he wants to rip it out of your hand just so that you can't boost with it, because it probably matters for the boost value a lot more than the actual scheme effect in this matchup for Magician. So yeah, interesting interactions. I heard that this matchup is actually like pretty Houdini favorite, especially if he's going first, but I haven't actually played it that much because why practice against Sherlock? Please let me have Sherlock when we're Arsenal drafting in the next tournament, please. The next character is Buffy. Now, specifically, this is Buffy Giles, because Giles has the insight scheme. Buffy Xander does not have any hand peaks, so this is like one half of the Buffy matchup, I guess, for Houdini. And having magicians definitely does help, because Giles, his only purpose is literally to play this card for hopefully as long as he's alive. Like that's it, because no one really plays training because Buffy already has a buttload of card draw in her kit. So Giles' only purpose is this card. And as Houdini, this card just completely nullifies Buffy's sidekick. So I think in this matchup, your opponent should be picking Xander almost every time for additional counter pressure, and the fact that Giles can only block with regroups, feints, and skirmish, while Xander can at least also block with right-hand man. There's a left-hand man. Who knows? But like, so yeah. This card just makes Giles obsolete, and I don't really think Buffy has a good time generally in this matchup anyways. She has a lot of 4s, but like she just doesn't have enough damage to actually kill Houdini, really. And like, I don't know if I like need to even go through this character. I will say the sight, it can remove 2 cards from your hand. So being able to cancel that effect is really nice, but like Houdini can actually, I don't know how quickly he can kill Drusilla, because Drusilla can block with a lot of 4s. But see, then we start theory crafting and we get into weird internet debates with people who go, Spike can beat Houdini, but like, why are you picking Spike? It's just like not, why am I even entertaining it? If you have magicians in your hand, you can probably just ignore Drusilla, because like this is what makes her scary, and if you can just like cancel it, well, Spike doesn't have any like random discards or anything, so you're not gonna lose it otherwise. So you just, again, it's kind of like the Giles situation. You just completely nullify the entire point of their sidekick, and then You just go, hee Houdini. Hee Houdini. Then we have Deadpool. Nope Mine, or non-retinal scan access to danger room, whatever you want to call this. It's just a 3-value versatile. It says after combat, look at your opponent's hand, recover 1 health. This is just like a one-off card in a deck that has 30 one-off cards, so it's kind of just like a 50-50 chance who draws their one-off card first. It's kind of like the Dracula. It's basically like all of these characters, when they draw their hand peek, they're probably just going to use it as soon as they can, because that just maximizes the chance that you haven't drawn secrets yet. And so I don't think it really matters too much in the Deadpool matchup, just because if Deadpool is going to like look at your hand to set up some big turn, he has to have the other like combo pieces or whatever he wants to do in hand to like make use of your hand knowledge. Like if he sees you don't have defenses, like he could gaze you, except like statistically the odds that he has like this exact card and then like 1 or 3 other exact cards in a deck full of unique cards. Like I just don't think his deck is consistent enough to really make use of the hand knowledge. But like it's nice stopping the effect, because it would cancel the heal if I'm not mistaken, which I feel pretty good about. I think the Deadpool matchup for Houdini is like probably a walk in the park, because you just like hit him twice with like a flourish or the 4 boost, get his health to like 5, and then you just rip out his cancel and big reveal him and just kill him. Like the low max health threshold is just really not good for Deadpool in this matchup at all. Then we have Bloody Mary with Stolen Memories, which her scheme is very good. It would be good in this matchup because Houdini has a lot of pretty high boost values, so it would actually like make some interesting decisions, and it is helpful for Mary to get rid of some of her opponent's key cards, especially given how undertuned she is. But when she doesn't have Stolen Memories, that can kind of be really rough, because this is one of her better cards. And anyway, I think this matchup is like also horrible for her, because if she tries to play at a low hand count, she gets really vulnerable to things like Set the Stage. If she ends at 3 cards in hand all the way across the map, it doesn't matter, because Houdini can just maneuver Escape Artist boost in right next to her, set the stage, rip a hand out. Now she has 2 cards in hand, and bad things are going to happen. So in general, Mary struggles against people who aren't like value based in their attacks. Houdini has a lot of boost cards, so Mary's cards like Broken Glass and Evade and Mirror Image just like aren't really that great against cards that are 3s but turn into 7s. So I just think this is kind of like one of those extra nail on the coffins that just is like, no, Mary, you can't be relevant at all. But if Mary draws a scheme early game, you just play it and hope that Houdini doesn't have it. And then we have Sun Wukong and his Fiery Eyes That See, which isn't really a crucial card that Wukong relies on. It's more of like a, oh, you ended adjacent to me, I'm going to Fiery Eyes, take away your good defense, and then Ox form you. Or it's something like, oh, you're Achilles and you have looping Battle Hardens. Well, now that I know that you have that, I'm just going to send it to the bottom of the deck and not really worry about it. I would say for Houdini, the card that he's really scared of getting sent to the Shadow Realm is probably Big Reveal. Yeah, because when you know that's the last card in your deck, Wukong can hold on to his ultimate defenses for a little bit longer, be a little bit more conservative with those now that he knows that like one of your 2 best big attacks like isn't coming. I've heard, I think Chad say he tried this matchup a lot and it didn't really feel super good for Houdini, just because yeah, sure, you can boost in and get behind the clone wall, but once the clone wall is set up, then you're wasting your attacks on clones, and Wukong can block and make you waste resources trying to actually kill the clones. And if he gets Phoenix form off like that, it still has a ton of health. So I think Never Reveals helps, but it isn't the thing that's going to win him this matchup. And now, speaking of things that'll win the matchup, we have Electra. So Mesmerize, a very good card for Electra to have, because first life she can look at an opponent's hand, gain an action, which is like an alright effect in and of itself. But on second life, she gets to also rip a card out of their hand. And so this is like a key part of her res combo one-turn kill approach, where she builds up like a perfect hand of attacks and Mesmerize, and then you kill her, and then she respawns, rips away your defenses, and either like fist hand combos you to death or just like slaps you with 2 6s. But with A Magician Never Reveals His Secrets, you just cancel Mesmerize, which means Electra's win condition, she generally has 2 win conditions, right? Just like full fatigue, exhaustion, runaway, snake root stuff, or just res combo turn kill. This just completely cuts off one of her win conditions and makes her have to rely on exhaustion. And I think Zero and Chocolate Rain tried this matchup out on stream, and if you know what you're doing with Houdini, you can basically win the game every single time. That does rely on you drawing this before Electra dies, but you are absolutely fine just letting the game play out until you have this and then some of your other cards in your hand, and then you can just win, which I think involves big reveal and misdirection, and the fact that the fist do not... Is it the fist or the hand? It's the hand. The fist is the card, I think. You can rely on the fact that the hand can't cancel anything and just recur misdirections and just literally 2 damage Electra to death with 10 auto damage. Second life, of course. So yeah, this card, absolute game changer in this matchup. Makes Houdini really, really good against Electra. Then we have the Genie, the set partner that Houdini came in. And this matchup is actually like very close. I think on UM League it's like 55% Houdini favored, but Sultans, this interaction, like, I don't want to say decides the game, but it makes it a lot easier for the side that wins the interaction. Basically, if Genie can Sultans like a big reveal or like a set the stage from you, he can just take something that would like hurt him a lot. That will help him tremendously, because I think Genie loses when he gets like 1 or 2 of his wishes yeeted, or like a crucial feint on like a big reveal turn. He'll just lose. And so he relies on 1 or both copies of Sultans to kind of take away Houdini's firepower or his set the stage card rip, because that will let him keep his wishes safe. And so as Houdini, if you're able to defend against Sultans, that lets you do those big things to Genie that he really doesn't want you to, and that helps a lot. So I think this is like a key card in the Genie matchup. And I remember I was playing Zero's Genie, I think at Gen Con, maybe. No, I think it was on stream. It was the first streamed game we had. And he like Sultans me turned 1. And I didn't have this card. And that felt really bad, because then the rest of the game I was just like, oh, this is a very uphill battle now that he's taken this card from me. So yeah, this card matters a lot in this matchup. And lastly, we have Squirrel Girl, which is the reason why this video is coming out in March and not February. But basically, Nutwork of Spies. I will actually read this one, since I'm assuming some people aren't as familiar with the Teen Spirit stuff yet. It says, look at an opponent's hand and choose 1 card for them to discard. If one of their fighters is adjacent to 4 or more squirrels, choose 2 instead. So this is basically the site, but with squirrels. And it's just like a one-off card, so it's like a 50-50 whether who draws their one-off card first, and then... Because Squirrel Girl is basically going to play this as soon as she can, after she draws it, hoping that you haven't drawn your copy. And having 2 cards chosen by your opponent and ripped out of your hand is absolutely horrible for you. So being able to stop this effect is amazing. And I don't know how this matchup plays out entirely, but I feel like it'd be a lot better for Squirrel Girl if she was actually able to get the Nutwork to work. So yeah, not being able to reveal your, or not having to reveal your secrets, I should say, should really help Houdini in that matchup. But thinking about it a little bit more, Squirrel Girl has 2 feints and the 2 4 cancels that she probably wants to save for offense. And then other than that, she's blocking with like 3s. So I think as Houdini, you just be super aggressive. I don't know if you go after the squirrels or not. But if you don't, Squirrel Girl has some big attacks. I don't know. This should be a fun matchup to try out. So maybe we can see how that goes in the future. And we got a bonus round. Woo, 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 woo. The scheme item token from the Redemption Row set, the security camera, is an effect that would let an opponent look at your hand. So Never Reveals can actually stop this scheme token, which is like a neat little interaction I didn't really think about until I was considering like all the ways you can look at your opponent's hand in Unmatched. And this is just like a cool thing. So when you're playing on the raft as Houdini, there is like another factor for you to think about. And security camera in a Houdini matchup in general is very strong, because if your opponent can use it, or if you can use it and see that your opponent doesn't have any feints or something, you can just big reveal them, and that feels good. So your opponent probably wants to just use it to stop you from using it, because your potential with it is crazy. It kind of would act like another set the stage, obviously just not as good because you're not taking a card from them. So they probably want to use this, so they can just look at your hand, stop you from getting the effect, also just know if there's a big reveal coming or something like that. And so you just being able to cancel that is just kind of like another, you tried, buddy, in that matchup. So yeah, especially when you're playing with just like the default tokens, this is the best scheme item on the raft, and it's probably going to get used by turn 2, I would assume, in any matchup with Houdini. So you kind of have to like hope that you draw magicians in your opening hand, especially if your opponent is going first and it's like all the way on the left side of the map and your opponent can just maneuver up and use it turn 1. But in general, it'll be a nice thing to have, especially late game, if your opponent is like camping it with a sidekick or something. But you shouldn't let them do that. You should kill it. Anyways, so like I don't think it matters that much, but it also matters a lot. I don't know if that makes any sense. Whew. So yeah, I need to get rid of my my face so that you can actually see the meme. Yeah, this was my first card conversation. I hope you kind of enjoyed the little, I don't want to say like deep dive into all the interactions, but it was definitely fun walking through for my end. And hopefully you can give me your thoughts on this card, because it's kind of one of a kind, just like you. And I hope they print more of these cards in the futures, like just like passive effects that make matchups different based on who you're playing against. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was just, this card is really cool. Houdini, all the new characters are coming out. Very, very cool. I'm so excited, especially for like Unmatched Adventures to come out. But yeah, so let me know what your thoughts are on A Magician Never Reveals His Secret. This is a conversation, so please join in the comments and let's talk about it. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. Look forward to hopefully more of these conversations in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, like, subscribe, and yay!